Good morning. We will bring things to order and get started with our program for today. On behalf of the Center for Constitutional Studies at Utah Valley University, welcome. I'm Scott Paul. I serve as the director of the center. We have a longer, well-thought-out, well-drafted mission statement that you can read on our website, uvu.edu/ccs. But the short version of our mission statement is to increase constitutional literacy in a nonpartisan manner at the local, state, and national levels. This conference is one of my favorite things we do in our center. We have a K-12 constitutional literacy program, which it's my happy place. This conference is also part of our Civic Thought and Leadership Initiative, which was created within our center by the Utah Legislature in 2021 to provide civic education and research. You don't know it yet, but all of you here are part of a movement. It's the underground movement. One conference at a time, one event at a time, we're working with educators to reverse the trend of civic illiteracy and civic apathy. When I say we, I mean a broad partnership among my colleagues in the Center for Constitutional Studies, the UVU School of Education, friends at the BYU School of Education, friends at the Utah State Board of Education, friends among our LEAs, and most importantly, in collaboration with in-service teachers who can help us translate university research into classroom-ready curriculum, materials, and practices. Thank you, without knowing it, for being part of the movement. Thank you for your commitment to civics education. We all know that STEM gets all the attention and the money, but we also know that without sound, strong civic institutions, our markets and economies can be destabilized, and that STEM focus will be rapidly marginalized. So as civic educators, you equip growing citizens with the knowledge, skills, and dispositions that they'll need to preserve our cherished American civic institutions and the communities that are built upon and around those institutions. So thank you. I say it every time I talk with you, those of you who have been here before, and with your teacher peers, but I'll say it again, and I'm just going to keep saying it. You are heroes. You deserve to be appreciated as heroes. I say that as a member of the community. I say that as a father of four who are working through your classrooms and your colleagues' classrooms right now. I know you take it on the chin sometimes out there. But in here, my colleagues and I salute you, we applaud you, and we thank you. Now, to conclude, I want to make you aware of 4 opportunities connected with the Center for Constitutional Studies. First, we have a summer program. If you like what you experienced today, we have a week-long summer program called the Constitutional Literacy Institute, where you get to go back to school and you spend the morning basically in graduate level courses as a student. And then in the afternoon, we have our friends from our School of Education, from BYU School of Education, and some of your teacher peers help to take the morning's substance and convert it into things you can use immediately in your classroom. The registration for that will go live soon. We'll send everyone here an email about that. We bring you in, we feed you. If you're coming from distant, we house you. There's even a stipend for attending. How many CLI alumni do we have here today? Is it worth it? Is it worth it? Yeah? Okay. Talk to them and don't take my word for it. Also, we've become involved as a center with the We the People, the Citizen and the Constitution program. We provide training for the last 2 years. We've hosted the secondary teacher training. Just this summer, we've worked with our friends at We the People and with our friends in the School of Education here at UVU to introduce the K-6 We the People, the Citizen the Constitution program. It's a program that we vetted thoroughly. We believe in it, for anybody who is interested in becoming involved with that, talk to us, and we'll do great things together. The third thing is in the works, but we're just going to tease it. This is a hopeful tease. We're in the process of developing a master's degree, a Master of Arts in Constitutional Government, Civics, and Law. And our primary focus for that degree are teachers. We'll have a non-thesis track that focuses on teachers. It will start, we'll have a month in the summer in person, and then go online through your school year, and then finish a month in person the following summer. One of the really cool things about this degree is we're partnering with the University of Oxford. So we're securing funding to significantly reduce the cost to send the teachers in that cohort over to Oxford for 2 weeks as a part of their summer study. Where you get to learn with brilliant Americans. I know it's ironic to go to Oxford to learn about the American Constitution. It's kind of sad that you have to go to Oxford to learn about the American Constitution. But there are brilliant American constitutionalists over there, and we have a research partnership with them. So keep an eye out for the master's degree. That would likely start, we take our first cohort summer 2024, assuming all goes well with the university as we're getting that online. And then lastly, this isn't for you, it's for your students, but we need your help. We have, through generous donors, what's called the Eric Zachary Wood Scholarship. It's a scholarship for incoming freshmen at UVU who are interested in constitutional studies. It's a full tuition scholarship for their first year. So it pays for their tuition. It also gives them a spot in our center as one of our student researchers. So why I'm telling you is for two reasons. One, anybody who applies is going to need a letter of recommendation for a teacher. But also, we need your help to identify students who are just showing an inclination or showing an aptitude for law, for constitutional studies, for government, and who have an interest in coming here to UVU. Let us know about them. Your recommendation will mean a lot as we're trying to identify these students. Well, how many? We have 2, 4. I think we have some scholarship money built up. So the first year we might have 3 or 4, and then we'll get down to where you take 2 students a year. So it'll be competitive. But with your help and your endorsement, your students will be especially competitive. So please take advantage of these opportunities and please spread the word about them. Now, I need to introduce my colleague, Dr. Robert Burton. I'm going to switch to a different device for the bio. So Robert Burton is the director of the Civics Thought and Leadership Initiative here in the UVU Center for Constitutional Studies. His research and teaching occur in the fields of constitutional law, American political thought, and political philosophy, focusing on civic education, the First Amendment, and the relationship between conscience and politics. He has taught Utah Valley here at UVU. He's teaching right now a large American Heritage section here at UVU. He's taught previously at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and at the University of Notre Dame. Dr. Burton received his PhD and MA in Constitutional Studies and Political Theory from the University of Notre Dame, and his BA in English and Politics from Southern Virginia University. When not reading, teaching, and writing, he loves to trail run and adventure with his family. So, Dr. Burton, thank you.
My mother always said I was a very loud child. So can everyone hear me okay without the mic? Is that all right? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn that off and set that down. Thank you again for coming today, and thank you to our Director Scott Paul for his kind welcome and introduction. The format that we're going to follow for today is kind of as follows. After I speak, I'm going to introduce our next presenter, the next 2 presenters, and then we'll go ahead. At that time, I'll give some further instructions for lunch. We'll break for lunch. We'll come back. I'll introduce the rest of our speakers, and we'll kind of go to that point. Okay? I want you to know that I echo everything that Scott Paul said in relation to the importance of what you do. As he mentioned, I direct something called the Civic Thought and Leadership Initiative here in the Center for Constitutional Studies. Our goal or purpose at the Civic Thought and Leadership Initiative is to help citizens and communities develop the civic knowledge, skills, and virtues or dispositions necessary for the perpetuation and flourishing of representative government. What that looks like in practice is that we work a lot with you, with teachers, to provide resources, to provide research, to provide professional development opportunities like this. And it really is a partnership, and we're really excited. Our initiative is only about a year old, and so we're still developing our programs, our programming for K through 12 educators, and so we appreciate your feedback, letting us know what's helpful, what's worked, and what you might need in the future. We also do a lot on campus, public events, and we're also working on developing curriculum here on campus to increase opportunities for civic education and training at the college level, because you do a wonderful job in your classrooms. We actually did a survey of many of you. We had over 500 social studies teachers and 4th and 5th grade teachers in Utah respond to our survey, asking what is it that you teach, and what motivates you. And we were so happy to see that the #1 motivation coming out of our survey for teachers in Utah was the duty that they felt in developing future voters, right, and helping them have the skills, knowledge, and dispositions needed to be good citizens. I just love that. And when we looked at what was taught, it was all the things that, as a center, we feel are really, really crucial, that those were present by and large. And so we're really excited. What we've realized is that there's a need to continue what you're doing at the college level, right, to help it stick and find better ways to engage our young people in civics, because frankly, too many of them are turned off by the state of our politics. And that really is part of the theme of our conference today. Before I talk about the theme for the conference, I want to tell a story. I read this somewhere and I can't remember the source. I've tried and tried to find it. I haven't been able to. So if any of you know where this came from, find me afterwards and be like, Dr. Burton, here's where I'll be so grateful. But I once read a newspaper clipping, a newspaper article from the early 1900s. And it described a community and all the things that were going on to develop and improve this community. And it included everything from improving roads, to promoting commerce, to caring for the elderly. There were like 15 projects that were ongoing at the time. And the interesting thing was, only 2 of them were conducted by the local government. Everything else was conducted by volunteer associations, many of which were not the local church. I'm new to Utah, so I'm still getting to know the lay of the land, but I was fascinated that this took place in St. George, Utah. This kind of bustle of associational life, of solving citizens coming together to solve problems, was flourishing in St. George, Utah. And again, this is before I moved to Utah that I read this story. In America, we've had a long history of... Carrie says I'm not loud enough. All right, I can use the mic. How about that? Testing. All right, I'll use the mic. America has a long history of associational life, of strong associational life. In the 1830s, a French aristocrat named Alexis de Tocqueville came to the United States of America. He ostensibly came to study the prison system, because believe it or not, at that time, America had the most enlightened prison system in the world. Go figure, eh? But anyway, so he came to study the prison system, how it worked. But what he really wanted to study was how American democracy worked. Because his family had lived through the French Revolution, and as you all know, as teachers of history and government, the French Revolution was slightly different than the American Revolution. And instead of resulting in something like the Declaration of Independence And the order that was brought by first the Articles of Confederation and then the Constitution, the French unfortunately got Napoleon, right? An enlightened dictator, and went through a series of ongoing revolutions and return of the monarchy and everything else. And so he wanted to understand what makes American democracy work. And why didn't it work in France? And he wrote what I think is one of the greatest works of political thought of the last several hundred years, Democracy in America, where he tries to address this question. He pointed to a couple things as being fundamentally different. The first one, he said, in America, the Americans have combined in a brilliant way, never before seen, the spirit of religion and the spirit of liberty. He said churches in America deeply respect freedom, and they preach liberty from the pulpit. They see in liberty the guarantee of their ability to live out their religious beliefs. And he said the opposite is true. Government sees religion as the mainstay of its morals and values. And so he says first is this combination of the spirit of religion and the spirit of liberty. But he said the second thing, he said that Americans associate and form groups and clubs and unions for everything. This is what he said. He said, Americans of all ages, all conditions, all minds constantly unite. Not only do they have commercial and industrial associations in which they all take part, but they have 1,000 other kinds: religious, moral, brave, futile, very general and very particular, intense and very small. Immense and very small. Americans use associations to give feasts, to found seminaries, to build inns, to raise churches, to distribute books, to send missionaries to the ends of the earth. In this manner, they create hospitals, prisons, and schools. Finally, if it is a question of bringing to light a truth or developing a sentiment with the support of a great example, they associate. Everywhere that at the head of a new undertaking you see a government in France or a great lord in England, you will perceive an association in America. His point is not just that Americans like to associate. They like to organize. They like to gather together as citizens to solve common problems. He said, one, that's good in and of itself. It creates bonds of affection, to use Lincoln's term. It creates a connection among citizens. But he says not only that, it's actually fundamental for democracy to work. And here's his train of thought. He says, in democracies, individuals are weak, right? In France, in an aristocracy, you had great lords that could do great things. But he said, in America, every individual is equal. And as an equal, they're relatively weak. And we hear that today, right? What can I do? I'm just one individual, right? Does my vote actually count? And so he says we laud our independence from others and we emphasize ourselves as individuals who make our own decisions and who define our own life. He said the problem with that is that it leads to a kind of deep isolation and a sense of even loneliness. Because the whole weight of the world rests on our shoulders alone. That's the way that we perceive it. And so he said two things can happen that are actually detrimental or even destructive of democracy. The first is that because we're all individuals and because we feel all the pressure to make our own decisions, ironically, we actually look to public opinion. What does the majority say? And we feel a strong influence to have our decisions determined by the majority. He says this can even lead to a kind of tyranny, right? That whatever the majority opinion is weighs so heavily on us that we feel just as compelled to follow it as we would if we had some dictator like Napoleon in France. He says the second danger is that when we feel so isolated, when as individuals we feel the weight of our separateness from everyone else, that we actually will look to government to solve all of our common problems. And that in doing so, we'll happily give up our liberty in the process, and that we'll have this kind of benevolent despot to take care of us, to look over us, so that we don't have to do that or feel the weight of that ourselves. So he said that's the danger in democracies. And that's why he says the science of association, of coming together as citizens, is so fundamental. Because it gives us a place. It gives us a community. It helps us not feel isolated or alone, to feel the weight of change or doing good on our shoulders alone. And it allows us to work in partnership with government and with each other in order to solve our common problems. So for Tocqueville, as long as we continue the strong associational life, as long as we had these bonds of affection that were created among us, we would remain a free people. That's all well and good, because when Tocqueville arrived, he saw this incredibly flourishing society, civil society. Again, in St. George, right? Here in Utah, we saw the same thing in that newspaper article that I came across. But unfortunately, political scientists and sociologists like Robert Putnam at Harvard University, among others, have identified a steady decline in associational life, in civic community life in America since the mid-1960s. He wrote a famous book called Bowling Alone. Has anyone heard of Bowling Alone before? Okay, good. So he said, basically, what is bowling alone? He said, basically, it used to be that people would join bowling leagues, right? Or clubs or other things in the community. The Elks Club and the Lions Club and the Rotary Club and clubs for every kind of topic, right? Just as Tocqueville described. And so he said, but there's been a steady decline, so that now we still bowl, but we do it alone. We don't join these other organizations nearly as much as we used to. And he said that's concerning. That's concerning for our civic life and our civic culture, for the development of something called social capital, which I'll leave to our next presenter. But he said that this is of great concern. And as we see today, a steady decline in trust in institutions and in each other, when we see rampant polarization and extreme political views on the left and the right that seem to get all of the media space, we think it's time for a revitalization of American civic life. We're one very small part of those who are trying to make that happen. But you are a critical part of that as teachers, because you are in our communities. You're in your classrooms. And it's so important that we have not only institutions around common goals, right? So a church, for example, is one of the best developers of social capital, of building civic community. There's a lot of data to back that up. But it's around a common theme or goal, right? A common doctrine, a common creed. We also need organizations that bridge as well as bond, that cross differences. And schools are one of those things, right? The kids in your districts, in your classrooms, come from all different walks of life. They bridge, right? You have the opportunity to bridge between left and right, between those who are more well off and those who struggle, right? You have the opportunity to be a bridge and to foster those kinds of associations and that kind of connection in your classrooms, in your community, and to teach your students why it's important. So that's our goal for today, is to be able to help give you a few tools, a few hands-on resources, but also just to remind you of why what you're doing is so important and the ways that you could participate in that. So thank you. I look forward to the rest of our conference and to hear your thoughts afterwards.